22.6% of your income is going to be going to paying off your loans. So that doesn't include food, entertainment. It doesn't include a rent. It doesn't include anything else. That's just how much you're going to be paying to your student loans. And that's for the most highest paying degree that you can get in the state of California. Hello, and welcome to the Less is More Education podcast with your host, Steve Flores, where I review the research that is most relevant to pedagogy and education policy to help teachers in their ongoing learning. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify to keep the podcast going. If you can find me and reach me on Instagram and YouTube at lessismore.education, on Patreon, or on Patreon at patreon.com/lessismoreeducation. And today I discuss what is the cost of college in California. And I kind of focus on what are the consequences of this for homeownership, because that's another big problem that a lot of people that I find in my generation tend to have, is being able to afford or go to or own a home. And I think this is something that's going to be really important for students in particular that are thinking of, all right, should I go to college or shouldn't I go to college? And how much is this going to cost me? This is one of the things that I found that a lot of students never had a conversation about with their counselors or with their parents or with anybody really, is how much does college cost, right? Some students will say like, oh, it costs too much, so much so that I don't even want to go. But they don't know how much exactly that is. And some just go like, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to go take out loans or get grants or scholarships to pay for it. And not knowing like what that means. Not everyone gets to have a scholarship. Not everyone gets to have a grant. And so we're going to take a look at all that stuff and how much college really costs in California. So when we think about the question of the cost of college, one of the places that if you want to really look at is the U.S. Department of Education's College Affordability and Transparency Center, CATC. You can get to it at collegecost.ed.gov, and there you can find a lot of information on specific schools, how much is tuition and fees, what's the net price, and even the percentage of undergraduates that get grants. So if you are thinking about money and you're looking at 4 or 5 different colleges, it might be worth it to visit this website to go see, or send your students over to this website so that they can look up, all right, what are your chances of getting a grant or a scholarship, and how much is it going to be? So one of the things that is important to note about college, and you probably hear this all the time, is that overall in long term, you're going to be making more money if you have a college degree than if you have no degree, right? And that to me is a really problematic way of situating this this problem, because it's not an either or. It's not you go to college or bust or McDonald's or nothing, right? There's all these other in-between options that I'm going to go over in the next episode that kind of can give students a better idea as to like what's the landscape of work or the workforce, which is what they really need if they want to be able to make decisions or good decisions about what they're going to do with their futures. So you probably already know that your expected wages or probability of employment, so your employment rate, really depends on your type of degree that you get. So typically STEM fields fare better than those in humanities in both wages and unemployment rates, meaning that if you study something that's in a STEM field, you're more likely to get a job and you're going to be paid more if that's what you're really focusing on. But again, that's only one narrow aspect of being a person, of surviving out here, is how much money you're going to be making. So this doesn't mean that humanities are not worth it to go study. I think there's an argument that you should probably study humanities if you have like a real passion for it, if you really are interested in them. If you're taking a major in the humanities just because you feel like you need to major in something to to be successful in life, then you're going to be really, really disappointed with the end result. And and especially in what we call like underemployment, which I'll go over in the next episode. But this episode is just going to be about the cost. And so if you do want to study something in the humanities, there are some options available to you, but you're going to have to really think hard about what type of schools you're going to go to, how much you're going to be, it's all going to cost, and where you can save money. And you have to think about it very hard because, there's going to be a lot of consequences to this. So I'm also going to be putting the price of college in terms of what's called debt to income ratio, or the DTI rate. You're going to hear me say DTI a lot, and that's all that means, just debt to income. It's your debt divided by how much you're bringing in times 100. And your debt to income ratio, if you want a good debt to income ratio when you graduate college, so you're living on your own, maybe you're renting an apartment, you have a job, a good debt to income ratio would be between 15 to 20%, not including your rent. If you want to be able to own a home in California, like get a loan to own a home, your total debt to income ratio has to be under 39%. Now, keep that number in mind because I'm going to bring it up in the future, especially when we start to analyze, all right, is college worth it, right? Or what are the pathways to college that can make it worth it? Other things that you should keep in mind is loans. Most people that go to college, so I think in California, about 56% of the students attending public institutions, so you're talking about community colleges, Cal States, UCs, any public education, about 56% of them are coming from homes that earn less than $40,000 a year, which means that they qualify automatically for the maximum amount of Pell Grants and Cal Grant. And that's not that much. But what that means is that there's a lot of students out there that are taking out student loans. And these student loans are carry with them a 4.99% interest rate, so like just a little bit under 5%. And these are federal student loans. And these are going to become important later on when we start to talk about costs of things and doing the math on costs of things. So one of the things that I wanted to do is to kind of highlight like what's the range of costs by picking specific majors that kind of highlight the total range of costs. And the first major that I'm going to highlight is going to be electrical engineering. Now, you can go into the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and you can find all this information on, well, what degrees pay the highest, what degrees pay the lowest, what degrees have the highest or lowest unemployment rates, which ones have the highest and lowest underemployment rates. And the best degree that I could find out there was an electrical engineering degree. We're just focusing on bachelor's degrees. We're not looking at master's. We're not looking at doctorate. We're just focused on bachelor's degrees. I wanted to narrow down the focus because this is all about college. So electrical engineering is one of the highest paying degrees that you can have straight out of college. It has one of the lowest unemployment rates and one of the lowest underemployment rates as well, meaning that you're almost definitely going to find a job if you study electrical engineering, and you're going to make a lot of money. Well, how much money? Well, the average yearly income for a student that's just getting out of college in electrical engineering is $100,752 a year. That's a lot. That's a lot of money to earn straight out of college. So if you're really interested in the sciences and engineering, electrical engineering, that's the pathway to go for sure. Okay. So let's do some math here. Now, if you take that $100,000, you're going to have to pay taxes on that because you're making a lot of money. Your total federal and state income taxes are going to add up to about 33.3%, or a third of your money. So a third of your money is just going to disappear. That's going to leave you with $67,201.58. Now, that's quite a bit of money that you're going to have. But if you think about how much a UC costs, let's say you went to a UC, and this is going to be an average. So doesn't really matter. It could be UCLA, it could be UC Irvine, it could be UC Riverside, wherever you go. The average cost is going to be about $92,208. And that's going to include your tuition, your fees, your room and board. So this is assuming that you're going to be living on campus. I chose to select that because it makes it easier to do the math. If you're living off campus, it's hard to do the math because, it really depends on, well, what kind of an apartment are you living in? How many roommates are you having? So to kind of simplify the process, I'm assuming that you're going to be living on campus. And this also includes food. And it also includes $18,000 in yearly grants and scholarships. That's the average amount of yearly grants and scholarships awarded to people that go to UCs, and that's awarded to 70% of their students. So most of the students that go to UCs get grants and scholarships. That's pretty amazing. So the graduate would, so if you take your loan, you would have to pay off that loan in about 10 years before something called capitalization. That means where you start earning the interest accruing starts to get put back into the principal rate. And then once you're in that stage, it's going to be really hard to pay off your loan. So I'm assuming you're just going to try to pay off the entire loan in 10 years. And you can even add another 6 months to it because that's how long you have before you have to make your first payment. And that's going to put your monthly loan payment at $1,265.57. So that's a DTI rate. So it's a debt to income ratio rate of 22.6% from just your student loans. So you're already like 22.6% of your income is going to be going to paying off your loans. So that doesn't include money food, entertainment. It doesn't include a rent. It doesn't include anything else. That's just how much you're going to be paying to your student loans. And that's for the most highest paying degree that you can get in the state of California. So, and that's the degree that has the highest pay, the lowest unemployment, the lowest underemployment, all that. So this doesn't include food, this doesn't include retirement, this doesn't include insurance, car payments, all that stuff is not included. So very quickly, your debt to income ratio is going to jump up to maybe 40, 50% if you start to include all those things. Now, why is that important? Well, remember, what should your debt to income ratio be? This is including your mortgage. If you want to own a home, it has to be 39%. That's you're already disqualified from that, right? So unless you buy a really cheap home, we're talking about maybe $300,000, $400,000 homes. And last time I checked, we're in California. Finding a home like that, you could find it, but you're going to be living very modestly. Right? That's the way I'm going to put it there. So with time, though, just like any other job, you're going to be earning more and more income the longer and longer you stay at your job. So that means that the payoff for college is going to be somewhere in between that 1 to 10 year range. So that 10 years is when, hopefully by then, you've made all your payments and now you don't owe anything to anybody, and all the income that you're bringing in is just going to be for you to save and to earn and to go buy a home or to do anything of that nature. And that's hopefully really good, right? And so now that means that if you took out all of your loans from student loans, then you're going to have a really long time before you get a payoff. Well, what if you decided, I'm not going to go to a UC? What if I want to go to a Cal State and study electrical engineering? So what's the cost of that? it's going to be less. It's not a whole lot less, but it is going to be less. It's going to be at $75,590. So it's going to be about $20,000 yet less to go to a Cal State than it is to go to a UC. And you might be one of the lucky 37% of students that receives an average of $9,115 in grants and scholarships. And so the actual rate of grants and scholarships and the amount is going to be significantly different. And so this would put your debt to income rate at 18.5%, which means that if you do decide to go the Cal State route, you're immediately going to be put into a position where you might be able to afford a home, right? And that's great. That's awesome. That puts your payoff way sooner. Now, let's say that you decide, all right, what if like engineering isn't my thing? What if I'm not a science person? What if I'm just not all that interested in that? Then you're going to go down like the humanities route, right? And let's say you decide to get like a degree in psychology. Well, if you decide to get a degree in psychology, let's assume that you're still going to a Cal State. That's going to put your average salary around $41,400. And that's from NCEES. And that's going to put your debt to income ratio at 41.8% just from paying back your loans. So 41% of everything that you make is going to be going into paying back your loans. That doesn't leave a whole lot for rent. It doesn't leave a whole lot for food. It doesn't leave a whole lot for entertainment, for anything else, right? And this is just you living very conservatively. Now, what could you do about that, right? That sucks. Like 41.8%. That's you're definitely going to have to hit that 10-year limit before you start to make any sort of money whatsoever. Well, another option would be go to California's community colleges. So sometimes they're abbreviated CCCs. And these are a great option because you can do your first 2 years at a California community college. That's going to bring you your cost of the first 2 years to just $5,712. That is way less. And I highly suggest that. And this is one of the things that I was telling my students all the time is, hey, if you're going to go to college, really, if you want to make it worth it, you should really go to community college. The other added advantage about community colleges is they have these things that are called ADTs, which means that let's say that you wanted to go to a Cal State right after community college. If you meet the minimum, if you take the classes, the minimum requirements for your ADT, you pass them, you get good grades, that automatically gives you a spot into a Cal State. And so you can transfer very easily just like that. And you've just saved yourself somewhere in the order of about $30,000. Just like that. That's amazing. I highly suggest everyone do that. Because then what will happen is it'll take your 41.8% DTI rate and drop it all the way down to 24%. Still not great. You still want to get it under 20%, but it's way better. And now you can actually have your degree in something that you really enjoy in the humanities. It's much more manageable. All right. So all this assumes that you're going to be living on campus. If you're going to a community college, that's going to assume that you're commuting to campus, because community colleges don't really have all that much on campus living. And now you're doing great. Now the problem is most students don't graduate in 4 years. Most students actually graduate in 6 years. And that has some pretty severe implications. Because if you graduate in 6 years, now your debt is going to go up by another 50%. That's much, much higher. And then that's going to be compounded by that. And that's going to be compounded, and that's going to have even more severe consequences. So that's going to drive your debt to income ratio even further up. This is why it's really important that graduates, that if you're an undergrad, if you're going to college, you should finish in 4 years. Now, the other problem is that federal student loans have a maximum amount that you can borrow. You can't take out all of your loans from federal student loans. If you're going for 4 years, the cap is $45,000. And then it's another $12,500 on top of that for every following year, right? So that's going to add in like another $25,000 if you graduate in 6 years. But that's at 4.99%. So how are you going to make up the difference? If you remember, I said a UC costs something on the order of twice of that, right? So we're looking at about trying to take a look at that. It's about $90,000. And a Cal State, that's going to run you somewhere around $75,000. Those are huge differences, right? So Cal State, $75,000, you got $45,000 in loans. That means that you have $30,000 to make up the difference. And that can be done either by taking out more loans, more private loans at a higher interest rate. So that means your DTI is actually going to be much higher than what I had told you before. Or you could maybe try to get a job and work your way through college. And even if you work your way through college, you're still going to end up with student debt, which is kind of tragic right there. All right. Now, the other good news, though, is that you could qualify for something that are called Pell Grants. Now, Pell Grants are going to be given to like that 56% of students that I was mentioning earlier, because I think the cutoff is around $40,000. So if your family income is $40,000 a year, you're going to get about $7,395 per year in a Pell Grant automatically. And then you can tack onto that a Cal Grant, which is another $1,648, which is great, right? And that's going to help reduce your costs. Is it going to reduce your cost to zero or to not? Like, no. That's not that much money. If you think about a Cal State, the tuition is about $5,700. So the Pell Grant might be able to cover that, but then you still got to add in, so that's going to be tuition and fees, and you're still going to have to add in books, which is hundreds of dollars, food, which is hundreds of dollars, and like maybe rent if you're going to be living on campus or off campus, and that could run you thousands of dollars, right, for over the course of a year. And so all those little bits are going to help, but the payoff is going to be way into the future. And so there's going to be many, many students in California that are going to find that college is not really financially worth it, especially if you don't have some kind of purpose for being or going to college. One of the most important questions that you can ask a student is why? Why are you doing any of this? And the shocking part to me is that students look like deer in headlights when you ask them this question. Why? Why are you in my class? Because I have to be. Why do you have to be in my class? I don't know. That's the conversation that we have, right? That I had, it felt like daily when I was teaching. And so that's terrible. That's like the whole point is to figure out like, all right, what are you going to be doing for a living? Is to have some kind of a why, at least in terms of what you're going to be doing for a living. And what we're doing is we have this college or McDonald's story that we're telling our students, and that's not really helpful to them because they wind up missing out on all the other things that are possible for jobs or for work or things that could be meaningful to them in their lives. And this is one of the things that I hate about the education system is that there's a lot of lazy thinking. And the lazy thinking goes like this. If you graduate college, you're going to make more than somebody that just has a high school degree. So we should push everyone to college. That is incredibly lazy, short-sighted thinking that we've been doing for the past 20 years. Now, there is some movement to go away from that type of thinking now, but the problem is we put so much effort and momentum into this college or bust narrative that it's going to be really hard to steer the ship away from it. If you go up to a student and you tell them, hey, why don't you consider being a plumber? Why don't you consider being an electrician? They're going to be offended because their whole lives they've been told they should go to college because that's where you're going to make the most money. Now you're going to tell me to go to a plumbing school and become a plumber? How dare you, right? You want me to make not much money? Is that what you're telling me? And that's the problem with that narrative, is that they seem to think that there's these other careers, but those are for people less than them. But in reality, a plumber is going to tend to make a lot more money than somebody who graduated with a philosophy degree, right? Those are just facts, because a plumber only has to go to school for a couple years, maybe do some apprenticeships, and then they're going to be out making around $65,000 on average in California, right? And so that's already above the $41,400 that I mentioned earlier for a psychology degree, right? And they didn't have to take out all those student loans. Their schooling was faster. They earned money right away. That's what I mean by the third option. There's another option that's not being told to students, and they should be made aware of it, and they should be made aware that those jobs carry with them a lot of dignity, right? You're not less than for becoming a plumber or for becoming an electrician or for not going to college. You can be equal to. So now let's think about what are the consequences of all this. So even for the highest paying degree, if you're going to be going to a UC, the payoff is going to be in like 10 years. If you get anything less than that, the payoff is definitely going to be 10 years out. Well, what does that mean in terms of home ownership? In terms of home ownership, that means that you can't buy a house in your 20s in California. And that's a problem, right? Now what we're going to do is we're going to push home ownership until you're in your 30s. Well, let's think about it. Most people get loans or mortgages, right? It's basically a loan to pay for their house. How long is an average mortgage? 30 years. That means that if you get a house, you purchase a house in your 30s, you're not going to pay it off until you're in your 60s, right? Retirement age is going to be around 62 to 67 for most people. So right when you're retiring, that's when you're going to finally have your payoff, right? Now you don't owe anything to anybody, and you're going to own your home, and now you can finally enjoy your grandkids. Oh, but you're in your 60s, right? Your health isn't the best, right? You're not at the top of your game. It's going to be really hard to do things that are really meaningful. If you don't have a job, you still need meaning in your life. Well, where are you going to get that meaning when you're in your 60s? You don't work. People have this mistaken idea that, retirement means I just get to sit back and relax. Well, the problem with that is you need some reason to wake you up. And this is why I really think that it's for people, it's really important for us to think about the stages of our lives and where we're going to get meaning from at each stage, right? And meaning can come from a bunch of different sources, and that's fine. I think when you're young and you're a man, right, I think it's good to think of it in terms of life's an adventure. I have to go out and I have to achieve and I have to contribute something to the greaterment of society, to make society even better. Live out the hero story. That's what we should be telling young boys is, hey, you're the hero of your own story. Let's figure out how you can live it out. Let's figure out what you can pursue to make yourself better and to make everything around you better, right? It could be starting a business. It could be going to college. It could be helping people through psychology. It could be, there's all these different options available to you. Let's go explore them. And if you're a woman, I think that story can be shared out to them as well, right? There's no reason why it has to be any different. Hey, go out and find your place in the world. What is it that you love to do? How do you want to contribute? You're the hero of your own story as well, right? And that's a great story to give to young people. Just go like, hey, live out your potential. Now that you're in your 20s, 30s, now you have to actually put in the work, put in the effort, right? Work really hard. And for the first few years, it's going to be going to college, it's going to be working at your job and putting all your effort into that. But then you're going to hit a transition stage, right? That's going to be good. And for most people, it's going to be, hey, let's go get married. You find a partner, you have some kids, and there starts your next stage in life, right? That's the stage that I'm in right now. I have kids. So now I'm in the father stage. And my priorities in work are still important to me, but there's this new priority that's taking up a lot of my thinking, and that is, how can I raise the best kids possible, right? How can I make them the most self-actualized possible? How can I help them become happy people that love to accomplish things? That's where I'm at right now. And for me, that means I'm going to be doing something different as a father than my wife is as a mother. And that's great. That's awesome. And it goes something like this. I set up borders. I go like, all right, we have to leave by a certain amount of time, right? We got to get going. It's constantly pushing them to meet like deadlines and going like, all right, here's where you can go. Here's where you can't go. This is where like the borders of safety are, and try to stick to them as much as you can and hold them accountable to that. For my wife, it's more about letting them become creative, about bringing down borders, right? About letting them figure out what it is that they want to be or become in the future through exploration. And by taking time and going in and smelling the roses. And that's beautiful. And we have roles that are different. And because we are different, together, we're able to make complete people, right? It doesn't have to be that one person has to be male and one person has to be female in order to accomplish this. But you definitely need somebody that's going to be introducing a little bit of chaos into their lives, and somebody that's going to be introducing a little bit of orderliness into their lives so that they can become whole people in themselves. That's what's necessary, right? And so that's the stage that we're in, right? I'm a parent. The next stage is going to be, all right, I'm done working. Where's my purpose going to come from? And for me, I hope that purpose is going to come from helping my kids raise their kids. It's going to be from becoming a patriarch, right? And there's a lot of things out there that are saying like, oh, you should be wary of the patriarchy or it's bad or whatever. No. For me, what that means is I want to show my grandkids, how to live out their lives so that they can get the most happiness and gratification and purpose out of it. And then my wife will become the matriarch, hopefully, right? And try to take care of her grandkids and live out that point in her life. And that's good. That's great, right? And, I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but if we're thinking about retirement, right? And bringing this all back to this is you need something to drive you, some kind of purpose. And retirement, you shouldn't think about it in terms of I'm just going to sit back and relax and do nothing, because then what you're going to do is you're going to miss out on all these opportunities to have purpose in your life. And what tends to happen with people once they retire is if they have nothing to wake up to, they have nothing in the future for them, nothing waiting for them, they just die. And that's a tragedy, right? And so we got to think about that. Home ownership is being pushed into your 30s. That means you're going to be working into your 60s. And that means you're going to be retiring in your 60s. And that might not be the worst thing. Life expectancy in California is 79 years old, right? So By the time you graduate, by the time you retire, you probably have like another 15 years. And so what does that mean for your grandkids? It means you're going to be lucky if you see them graduate high school, right? Which is kind of tragic, right? And sad. But if we could somehow push home ownership earlier to the 20s, right? Then you're retiring, you're probably going to retire at the same age, but your life expectancy is going to go a little bit beyond that, and you can be there for your kids when they graduate their high school, right? And you can live out all the stages of life. And that's beautiful if you can make it that far. And so here's the other consequence of pushing homeownership into their 30s is that a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people wait to have kids until they own a home, right? So if you wait until you're in your 30s, this is going to have some problem. It's going to create some problems, especially if you're a woman, because you're already considered a geriatric mother at the age of 35, meaning getting pregnant and giving birth becomes way more risky after the age of 35 than before the age of 35. And now we're pushing the payoff of going to college to around that range, right? So that's going to leave women with like a very short window in which to get pregnant, have kids. And you can kind of see it now. This is why a lot of women now are waiting into their mid 30s, maybe even their 40s to have kids. And that's going to have profound implications for the stages of your life, right? Like, are you going to be able to live out that third stage? Yes or no? If we keep pushing things further and further out, there's going to be consequences. And we have to be honest about what those consequences are going to be. And we have to give young people an honest look at what their future is going to look like, right? So who is it worth it to go to college, right? For what families? Well, only 18% of Californian residents own their homes. Think about that, right? 18% of families, of people, either were able to buy their homes, right, cash or whatever, or were able to make all the payments, right, into their 60s in order to own their home. What happens to the other 80%, right, 82%? I don't know, right? And I don't think that number is going to get higher. I mean, that number, 18%, that's the lowest home ownership rate in the United States. And I'm talking about home ownership without a mortgage. So home ownership covers two things, right? It's kind of a broad term. It includes people that just straight up own their homes and people that have mortgages. That's what homeowners are considered. The home ownership rate in California is somewhere around 56%. But how many people actually just straight up own their homes? That's only 18%. That's a small rate. It means most people don't make it to owning their homes. That's, it's kind of sucky. And so you have to think about, well, what does that mean? All right. And then the other things that pushing the payoff of college until later is going to be, all right, well, what if you wanted to start a retirement account? What if you wanted to start your 401k, or if you're a teacher, your 403b, right? If most of your money is going to paying off your student loan debt, you're probably not going to put a whole lot of money into retirement savings. That means you're not really going to start retiring or saving for retirement until you're in your 30s, which could push your actual retirement into your later 60s. And that's a problem, right? Because again, let's think about the stages. Are you going to be able to be there for your grandkids or not? All right. And that's something that I'm constantly thinking about. And so this pushing the payoff of college it's going to start to affect all these other parts of our lives. And if you talk to anyone that's in their 30s, any of the millennials, right, you'll start to see, all right, how has this debt affected their lives? And how has it affected the decisions that they make? And that's something that we should think about. So what's the best option? Right? In my opinion, go to a community college for a couple of years. And this is the best option for those of you that think college is right for you. Go to community college for a couple of years, transfer, get your degree, start making your money, right? And if you really care about the subject that you're looking into or that you studied, maybe get a master's or PhD. But you got to keep in mind those cost money too. And that's going to push the payoff even further out unless you can get some kind of grant or scholarship. All right, that's it for today. Thank you very much for listening to the Less is More Education podcast. If you would like to support the podcast at the cost of one coffee a month, please visit patreon.com/Less is More Education. If you prefer reading about the research most relevant to pedagogy and education policy, visit lessismoreeducation.substack.com.